thanks for tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate, our source of local journalism here in the Acadiana area. They're, of course, reporting around the state of Louisiana, and we are glad to bring you this community service, reading the printed news to you every Monday through Friday between the hours of 9 and 10 a.m. We could not do that without the generous volunteer efforts of people like Mr. Bruce Cohen, who's here with us this morning. Bruce is a volunteer. Bruce, thanks so much for reading the news this morning.
As always, Matt, it's my pleasure. And I appreciate you being at the tech end of things so that I can do this from my home studio. I appreciate that very much.
Glad to do it. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Good morning, Acadiana. It is October 20, 2020. October 20, 2020. Wow. And this is Local News Live. We'll start off with a local story. Council's set to consider time limits. Public comments, meeting links are sent to a Lafayette resolution by Claire Taylor, staff writer. Public speakers will only have 3 minutes to address Lafayette City and Parish Councils if those bodies approve a resolution up for consideration Tuesday. The resolution also calls for Parish Council meetings to start at 4:30 p.m. with a limited length. I feel like these lines up with the continuing efforts of the city of Lafayette and its officials to keep people quiet. Devin Trey Norman, a regular speaker at council meetings, said on Monday. Will Thiel, another regular speaker at meetings, agreed. This is just clearly another effort in a string of efforts to limit people's speech at council meetings, he said. Because of a home rule charter amendment approved by voters, City Parish Council was replaced in January with the City Council and a Parish Council. Both groups meet on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. Parish Council meetings begin at 5 p.m., followed by joint meetings of both councils. City Council meetings start after the joint meeting ends. The schedule makes for long days of staff and City Council members. One meeting day began at 5 p.m. on July 21st, with Parish Council meeting and ended at 2:45 a.m. July 22nd, when the City Council meeting finally adjourned. Others have stretched past 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. Recently, the council switched public comment or open mic nights to every other meeting in an effort to reduce the length of meetings. Residents can address the Parish Council about any item not on the agenda on the first Tuesday of the month, and the City Council on the third Tuesday of the month. We're just trying to make it fair for everybody, City Councilman Chairman Pablo said Monday. If the resolution is approved by both councils, the Parish Council meetings will begin at 4:30 p.m. and not exceed 1.5 hours unless the majority of the council votes to extend the meeting by 30 minutes. Joint meetings will continue to begin at 5:30 p.m. or whenever the Parish Council meeting ends. City Council meetings will continue to start at 6 p.m. but will be limited to 4 hours in length unless the council votes to extend the meeting for 30 minutes. Residents will be limited to 3 minutes when addressing the city or parish councils or joint meetings, whether for open mic nights, resolutions, or ordinances. Currently, speakers have a 5-minute limit. It appears the resolution also pushed the open mic comments to the end of each meeting instead of at the beginning. Those said it's unfair to make people who attend a meeting for a specific agenda item wait 4 hours while people not on the agenda get to speak first. Makes me very, very upset to know that, especially those chairmen who claim to be for the people and for the rights of the people, trying to limit the amount of public input, Norman said Monday. It's more than just the 2 minutes being taken away. It's moving the meetings up to when people are at work. They're doing everything to try to discourage people from being part of the process. If meetings are lasting until 3 a.m., Thiel said it's because residents have a lot to say about the way the city and parish are being run and the decisions the mayor, president, and councils are making. It's always difficult with 5 minutes to appeal to council members to change their minds using facts and emotions, Thiel said. With less time, he added, residents will be forced to resort simply to emotional appeals, which is not a productive dialogue. And in a bright story, 2020 Civic Cup, Prejean to be honored for lifetime pursuing racial and social justice by Ken Stickney, staff writer. When Fred Prejean's mother, Idolia, used to walk him past the Alfred Mouton Monument in front of the old Lafayette City Hall, he'd ask who that towering figure represented. His mother, usually communicative, would grow tight-lipped, he remembers. She had so little to tell me, he recollected on Monday, after he was introduced as the 2020 Civic Cup recipient at the Community Foundation of Acadiana building. I came to realize my mother's shortage of an explanation resulted from her being intimidated by that statue. His mother was but a child, just 7, when the statue was erected to great local fanfare in 1922, a nod to the legacy of a Confederate hero from Opelousas slain in action at the Battle of Mansfield in 1864. Prejean said that monument was unveiled in an era of harsh segregation in Lafayette. He said it came a year before Lafayette City ordinance dictated that Black people could live only north of the railroad tracks downtown. That marked the establishment of North Lafayette as a segregated Black neighborhood. Prejean has spent much of his life pushing back against segregation and racial animus in his native city. He was born in 1946, an older baby boomer, in a year when Paul Kurzweg was awarded the Civic Cup. Most recently, he has established and helped lead Move the Mindset, an effort to move the Mouton statue away from its perch on public property in downtown Lafayette. That effort and his long career that included community organizing and establishing the local cooperatives was cited Monday in his selection of the Civic Cup recipient. The award will be given at 6 p.m. November 10th in a dinner at the Petroleum Club. He said he was informed recently of his selection as Hurricane Delta approached the Gulf Coast. He was filling sandbags and immediately thought of how proud his parents would have been. Idolia and her husband, Oron Prejean, raised their children in St. Paul's Catholic Church in Lafayette. Fred Prejean graduated high school at Holy Rosary. Prejean said he was a typical high school student who played sports at Holy Rosary, but his awakening to the civil rights movement came in the summer of 1964 when the Reverend Albert McKnight drove Prejean and his brother to the nation's capital for the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington. For a person from Lafayette to go to Washington, D.C. was mind-blowing, he said. There were no hotels available, but Father McKnight preached in D.C. People slept on mattresses in the church school. They went to the rally the next morning. I saw Martin Luther King live. I saw Rosa Parks live. I saw John Lewis live. I saw them all live. I can still remember Joan Baez singing Michel Come. It changed my life. The setup was perfect, Prejean recalled. The speakers placed so that the 250,000 in attendance could hear every word, especially Dr. King. You could hear a pin drop when he spoke. Prejean served 6 years in the Marine Reserves and graduated with an accounting degree from Southern University. Eventually, he put to work the training and community organizing that he gleaned from a variety of civil rights organizations, including the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or the SNBCC. Projects that led or in which he participated included establishing a holding company to provide low-income loans to the poor and establishing a subsidiary for a bakery. He also became involved with poor farmers in Sunset, where sweet potatoes were a main crop. He said farmers had to bring their produce to a market broker who treated Black families unfairly. So he helped farmers establish their own marketing operation, trucking sweet potatoes up north for sale. Move the mindsets to move the Mouton Monument off city property may come to fruition soon. Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Doherty in July expressed his intention to move the memorial. Prejean said he has never met nor spoken with Guillory, but believes Move the Mindset's educational work had an effect on the first-term city parish leader. He said the Mouton Monument is the sole remaining one to the Confederacy on public land in Lafayette, although there are still streets in the city named for Confederates. He doesn't accept the Confederacy's defenders who wish to keep such Marcus up. He said the Confederates were traitors unworthy of remembrance. Prejean also said he's got new projects in his sights. One is to improve 5 predominantly black public schools where students are operating below grade level. Why are these kids not getting the best education, he asked. A second project would be remembrance of black Louisianians who died from lynchings, including 6 who were lynched in Lafayette Parish, 2 in Lafayette, 2 in Capricorn, and 2 in Broussard. He said Move the Mindset is working with the Equal Justice Initiative to place markers in appropriate places to remember those who died between the end of Reconstruction in 1877 and 1950. We are well on our way with that project, he said. It's important, he said, to place markers at suitable locations where they can be seen by black and white people. We're not going to stick the markers in a black neighborhood where white people never travel, he said. These are things that everyone in our community ought to see. Until we know our history and learn and acknowledge what has taken place, reconciliation cannot occur. Our education project is focusing on teaching people about the lynchings, where they took place. We have the stories about the circumstances that go with each lynching. When people see the markers, they can understand. He said he understands the city's history and wants to others understand it too. He insists he is for right and presenting lessons on racism, but he doesn't intend to be offensive. Prejean said many young people of generations X, Y, and millennials have no idea about segregation, although the public activism this year shows they are perceptive about a lack of justice. He said he's getting ready to let the next generations take over the causes he's championed. I tell young people that the baton is handed over to you. All right. And we'll read one more local newsworthy story before we hit some public service announcements. Spacebound Studies. UL grad, ex-Space Center director, says today's students would fit in with Pioneers by Ken Stickney, staff writer. Jay Honeycutt's first career plans were earthbound and electrically charged. The former director of NASA's Kennedy Space Center, 83, visited with students at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, his alma mater, on Monday, talking about the direction of the space industry and how they might fit in it. He spoke for an hour with the UL graduates from the Cape Cajun Advanced PICO satellite program. His appearance marked a celebration of the Cape team's successful completion of its Cape 3 CubeSat and its upcoming launch, which will likely take place by the end of the year. The Cape team was also going to announce a new partnership with 6 local high schools through which UL students will teach high school students how to build the satellite and launch it. Honeycutt, a native of Jena, lived in various corners of Louisiana as a boy. His family following his father on assignments for Clico to Jeanerette, New Iberia, Winfield, and Pineville. After graduation from Pineville High School, he earned a degree in electrical engineering in Lafayette and fully expected to work for Clico. That was before he was drafted into the Army and served at Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. He said he took an engineering job in flight operations at Johnson Space Center in 1966. Houston was closer to his Louisiana home than Huntsville, he said, and his new niche in the space exploration program became his career path. Honeycutt worked in supervisory and management positions at the Space Center that included projects like Apollo and the Space Shuttle. His many duties over the next 2 decades launched the investigation into the Challenger Space Shuttle explosion in 1986 that claimed the life of Christine McAuliffe, a New Hampshire schoolteacher who was on the flight. Honeycutt was among those who had selected McAuliffe for the mission. Honeycutt said students he met at the Nick Pugh Aerospace Electronics Research Laboratory reminded him of those who worked at NASA in the 1960s. Most of them were young, 23 to 26, he said, and many came from smaller southern campuses like UL, where students are trained in hands-on fashion. They were green at their jobs, but in the space-age infancy, so was everyone else. He said with the Cape 3 students, drawn from multiple academic disciplines, knowing he would take them right now and you could do the work. All you needed was a chance, the opportunity to do the work, he said. Young engineers today, he said, are just as bright and capable as the old space center crews were, and probably a little smarter. What mission control people need, though, is that some extra, the courage and ability to make split-second decisions that can save the lives of astronauts. Honeycutt said when he grew up, there were no astronauts, so no one inspired to do the work. When he went to Johnson Space Center, he knew what we were doing. No one knew what we were doing. There were no old guys telling us to do it this way because they didn't know any more about what we were doing than we did. So young people learned on the job, growing in expertise and knowledge from the Apollo program to space stations to shuttles. Honeycutt said he had not been on campus for 3 years, and each time he returns, it's harder to find his way around. Sitting in an engineering building, he said, I know my way around the building and the bookstore in Martin Hall. If you're looking at public service announcements, designated on-street early voting parking. Well, we all know that early voting began last Friday, but there is on-street reserved parking in downtown Lafayette, and it will be available at no cost for early voters through October 27th. Parking meters will be clearly marked with early voting parking only signage in the following areas: West Conference Street between Buchanan Street and Lafayette Street across from the First Baptist School, Lafayette Street between Convent Street and Barry Street across from First Baptist School and in front of the Alexandria Houghton House. These designated parking spots are intended for short-term parking for early voters only who are casting ballots at the Registrar Voters Office at 1010 Lafayette Street. Early voting runs from Friday, October 16th and through Tuesday, October 27th, with the exception of Sunday, this coming Sunday, October 18th, and Sunday, October 25th, from 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. each day. Requests for mosquito control now available through Lafayette 311 Mosquito Prevention and Safety. LCG, or Lafayette Consolidated Government, is increasing mosquito abatement efforts in the parish following Hurricanes Laura and Delta. An increase in mosquito activity is a common occurrence following a storm event. Citizens noticing an influx of mosquitoes in their area can now use the Lafayette 311 portal to request service. All submitted requests are routed directly to the Mosquito Control Services, the mosquito control contractor for the parish. The Festival Awards is upcoming, and they have a student creative writing contest that goes along with it. Students in grade 3 through 12 from across the Acadiana area are invited to participate in a writing contest sponsored by the National Writing Project of Acadiana and the Festival Awards. Students can enter their original writing pieces in 3 writing categories, including poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction. Writing should be submitted through a supervising teacher or school facilitator online by sending them to HM Creamer, that's HMKREAMER, at louisiana.edu. Parent guardian permission must be granted by filling out the student writing contest entry form. The supervising teacher or school facilitator should submit these forms electronically by the submission deadline as well. Awards will be given for first, second, and third place winners. Contest winners will also receive an anthology publication of winning entries. Please feel free to contact Dr. H. Michelle Kramer, Writing Competition Coordinator for the Festival Awards Student Creative Writing Contest. And again, her email address is hmkramer, KREAMER, at louisiana.edu if you have any questions or concerns. And we say the Festival Award says happy writing to those students. Getting back into the news, Lafayette Schools ACT scores hold steady by staff report. Lafayette Parish School System's average ACT score for 2020 has held steady from the previous year, according to a statement from the school system. According to data from the Louisiana Department of Education, the school system maintained its average ACT score of 19.5, which ranks 8th among 70 districts statewide. The Department of Education reported that the state average ACT score for students in the 2020 graduating class statewide dipped slightly from the previous year, down 2 points to 18.7. The ACT test is a mutually beneficial assessment for both students and schools. It allows for students to demonstrate college readiness skills and knowledge to increase the opportunities for education beyond high school, said Chief Academic Officer Mark Rabelais. For our schools, it provides evidence and results that allow us as educators to reflect on how well we prepared students to continue learning or future pursuits. Ultimately, these results drive improvement for previous, past, and future cohorts of students. The Lafayette school system said it has made ACT test preparation a focus in recent years by providing students with support and resources to help them succeed. ACT scores are factors in college admission, financial aid, and scholarship determinations. Looking at the political news with the upcoming election, to vie for city court judgeship, Edwards Odenet compete for Division A seat by Megan Wise staff writer. The two candidates vying to be a city court judge in Lafayette include a father who has overseen the district's drug court program and a mother who has firsthand experience working in city court. Jules Edward III and Michelle Odenet will be on the November 3rd ballot for judge of Division A of Lafayette City Court. Edwards is not affiliated with a party. Odenet is a Republican. Judge Francie Bouillon, who has held the Division A seat since 1994, is retiring at the end of her term. City court judges serve 6-year terms. The Division A and B seats do not represent geographic regions, so eligible Lafayette voters elect both positions. Judge Douglas Salome, like Kelly Salome, is running unopposed on the November 3rd ballot for the Division B City Court seat. He has held the position since 1995. City Court is sometimes called the People's Court because it is the most common one for Lafayette residents to encounter. It's where most traffic violations, misdemeanor crimes, juvenile cases, and small claims cases are heard. So for their bios, we'll read about Jules Edward III. Edward, 62, has served for 27 years as judge for the 15th Judicial District Court over Lafayette, Acadia, and Vermilion parishes. The most logical career move for a district judge is to run for an appellate court judgeship, Edward said, but he doesn't view city court as a step down, but instead a lateral move. Most people would consider that moving down, Edward said. I'd like to say it's moving upstream. Edward shared his perspective and reason for running for the office by telling an urban fable about members of a church finding and rescuing babies in a river during a picnic after a Sunday service. As the fable goes, a crisis happens week after week, and at one point, somebody suggests going upstream to determine who is responsible for throwing babies in the river. That's kind of what I'm attempting to do. Go upstream and divert those folks before they get too far down career criminal paths, Edwards said. Prior to working as a district judge, Edwards worked as an attorney for the Louisiana Senate's Committee on Crime and Drugs, served as a public defender and assistant district attorney in New Orleans, and had a private practice with his wife, Orita, who is also a lawyer. He also served in the U.S. Marine Corps and Army National Guard. Edwards and his wife had 3 grown children. Edwards said his priority for city court, if elected, would be using evidence-based screening to determine the risk level of an offender in order to determine sentencing and probation terms. If a person has a low risk of committing crime and a low need of rehabilitative programming, particularly mental health treatment or substance abuse treatment, then we don't want to load them down with conditions of probation that require them to take time away from work or from their families, Edwards said. We don't want to put them in the presence of people who are in higher need of substance abuse treatment or present higher risk of committing crime. Edwards said he's the best candidate for the position because his qualifications speak for themselves. I think that's a very easy one to answer, Edwards said. I would just suggest that the voters go to the candidates' websites, look at what the candidates say they bring to the table, and compare that. I think it'll be an easy decision. And looking at Michelle Odenet's bio, Odenet, 52, returned to work last fall in City Court for the Lafayette Parish Public Defender's Office after taking time away to raise and homeschool her 4 children. Alternate says she was running for the judgeship to help others and improve the court. Nothing is more rewarding to me than helping people and empowering them to become self-sufficient, Alternate said. I'm running because I'm currently working in city court as a public defender, and it's giving me a first-hand opportunity to identify areas that are in need of enhancement to help make city court more efficient and accessible. Although Alternate has only been back working as a city public defender for about a year, she worked in the role prior to having children. Alternate also worked as an assistant district attorney in New Orleans and Lafayette and handled insurance defense cases for a private law firm. She took time away, She took time away from the courtroom to raise and homeschool her 4 children, 2 sets of twins, but maintained her license and kept up with the law while helping out at the medical practice of her husband, Ken. Alternate said her priorities for city court, if elected, would be starting a veterans court program allowing people to pay fines incrementally online and installing cell phone lockers for those appearing in court. She says she sees opportunity for intervention for veterans who misstep by connecting them with other local veterans who have assimilated to civil life successfully. Other opportunities Alternate has identified are primarily for low-income people who sometimes have to work or find childcare to contest a traffic ticket in court or set up a payment plan. Many people learn they cannot bring their cell phone in the courtroom only after arriving, and some people don't have the option to return to a vehicle to stash their phone while in court. A lot, if not most, of them don't have their transportation, Alternate said. They're taking public transit or they're using transportation apps to get to city court, and they're having to make the decision, do I hide my cell phone in the bushes and hope that it's there when I leave court, or do I just leave court and risk it, maybe get a warrant issued for my arrest? Alternate says she's the best candidate for the position because she's the only one with first-hand experience working in city court and is dedicated to her family. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I never do anything halfway, Alternate said. I wanted to return to the courtroom, and I gave 110% of my time and energy to my kids and ultimately ended up homeschooling them through grammar school, middle school, and the younger 2 through high school. The accomplishments reflect the quality of my work. Okay, it's almost a half-hour break. Usually we do is we go to the day in history, the zodiac, and if there are any funerals in the Lafayette Acadiana area today, which I don't think there, I don't see it listed, so I'm pretty sure we don't have that information today. But this is Tuesday, October 20th, the 294th day of 2020. There are potentially 72 shopping days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on October 20th, 1973, in the so-called Saturday Night Massacre, Special Watergate prosecutor Archibald Cox was dismissed, and Attorney General Elliot L. Richardson and Deputy Attorney General William B. Ruckelshaus resigned. Excuse me while I take a little sip of coffee here, clear my throat. Thank you for that break. On this date, in 1803, the U.S. Senate ratified the Louisiana Purchase. In 1947, the House Un-American Activities Committee opened hearings into alleged communist influence and infiltration in the U.S. motion picture industry. In 1967, a jury in Meridian, Mississippi, convicted 7 men of violating the civil rights of slain civil rights workers James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schmarmer, Freedom Riders. The 7 received prison terms ranging from 3 to 10 years. 1976, 78 people were killed when the Norwegian tanker Foster rammed the commuter ferry George Prince on the Mississippi River near New Orleans. In 1977, 3 members of the rock group Lynyrd Skynyrd, including lead singer Ronnie Van Zant, were killed along with 3 others in the crash of a chartered plane near Macomb, Mississippi. 1987, 10 people were killed when an Air Force jet crashed into a Ramada Inn hotel near Indianapolis International Airport after the pilot, who was trying to make an emergency landing ejected safely. 2004, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Ivan Chip Frederick pleaded guilty to abusing Iraqi detainees at Abu Ghraib prison. Frederick was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He was paroled in 2007. On the same day in 2011, Muammar Gaddafi, 69, Libya's dictator for 42 years, was killed as revolutionary fighters overwhelmed his hometown of Sirte and captured the last major bastion of resistance 2 months after his regime fell. In 2018, Saudi Arabia announced that journalist Jamal Khashoggi had been killed in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul. There were immediate international skepticism over the Saudi account that Khashoggi had died during a fistfight. 10 years ago, Iranian President Mohammed Ahmadinejad, in visiting Venezuela President Hugo Chavez, hailed what they call their strong strategic relationship, saying they were united in efforts to establish a new world order that would eliminate Western dominance over global affairs. 5 years ago, the United States and Russia signed an agreement to minimize risk of air collisions as they separately carried out airstrikes in Syria. 1 year ago, voters in Bolivia went to the polls for a presidential election that three-time incumbent Evo Morales would claim to have won. Morales would resign in November when the police and army withdrew support after weeks of demonstrations over allegations of election fraud. Today's birthday, rockabilly singer Wanda Jackson is 83. Former actor Reverend Mother Dolores Hart is 82. Actor William Rusty Russ is 70 years old, and I just have to say that he is a cousin of my wife. Actor Melanie Mayron is 68. Movie director Danny Boyle is 64. Actor Viggo Mortensen from the Lord of the Rings fame is 62. Democratic Vice President nominee Senator Kamala Harris is 56 years old today. Rock musician David Ryan is 56. Journalist Sonny Hostin from the TV's show The View is 52. Actor Kenneth Chouar is 49. Rapper Snoop Dogg is 49 years old today, and I'm sure he'll be celebrating. Singer Danny Minogue is 49. Country singer Jeff Loberg is 44, and actor-comedian Dan Folber is 44 years old today. Looking at the zodiac or the horoscope, if you're a Libra, problems at home will mount if you don't take care of your responsibilities or behave indulgently. Make a point of concentrating on getting things done on time. Scorpio, a change someone makes will play into your plans. Look for a diverse way to use your skills to find out what those around you have to offer and learn as you go, and opportunity will follow. Sagittarius, confusion will set in if you are gullible or let your heart rule your head. Abide by rules and regulations when in public. A thrilling experience may entice you, but consider the consequences. Capricorn, an unusual opportunity will lead to charges regarding how you work and live. Look at the pros and cons before you decide to alter your lifestyle. A relationship will influence the decisions you make. Aquarius, be a leader, not a follower. If you appear to be uncertain about what you want to do, someone will step in and take charge, go about your business, and finish what you start. Pisces, refuse to let your emotions take control. It's essential to be realistic. Offering empty promises will not go over well when you cannot deliver. Aries, concentrate on what will help you get ahead. Discuss what you want to happen with someone who can help you reach your objective. Don't let a sensitive issue hold you back. Taurus, don't be fooled by hidden costs. Make sure you are up to taking on a new or unexpected challenge. Do thorough research about it before you proceed and begin with intelligence. Gemini, proceed with caution, listen carefully, verify information before passing along, and ignore innuendo. Avoid conflict, lies, and joint ventures. Cancer, take the road less traveled. It's okay to be different. In fact, it will help you avoid getting into a dispute with someone focused on something that doesn't interest you. Leo, put some muscle behind whatever you decide to pursue. The less interaction you have with others, the easier it will be to get things done. Don't present what you are working toward until you are satisfied with it. And finally, Virgo, my birth sign, keep your emotions hidden. The less others know about you or what you are doing, the better. Bring about the changes you want to make and stop worrying about what others think or do. And as always, the horoscope is an entertainment feature, not based on scientific fact. And as I said, according to the paper, they listed no funerals for the Acadiana area today. All right, early voting numbers breaking records in Louisiana. States seeing long lines, lengthy waits at most election stations. My Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor, starts off our state stories. Twice as many black voters, 22% more in-person voters, and 3 times more mail-in votes have cast ballots during the first 2 days of early voting in Louisiana for the November 3rd presidential election, compared with the first 2 days of early voting in 2016. Long lines have increased voter interest, have been the news nationwide, with 20% of voters already casting their ballots in many states, including Nevada. Louisiana has been seeing long lines at election stations, but not the same 4 to 5 hour waits experienced in Atlanta or Houston. Still, 258,017 votes cast in the first 2 days of early voting. Numbers for the third day, Monday, won't be available until later Tuesday. Account for nearly 9% of the state's registered voters for the November 3rd election, according to the Secretary of State Office's records. Total early voting statewide is up 58% from the first 2 days of early voting in 2016, the last presidential election. About 212 absentee mail ballots have been requested ahead of the October 30th deadline. A total of 102,431 ballots already have been cast and accepted by parish registrars. That's almost 3 times the 35,186 cast over the same 2-day period in 2016 and more than 63,016 for the entire early voting period in 2016. Sarah Watson of Lafayette has been waiting outside Lafayette Parish Registrar of Voters' office in downtown Lafayette for 10 minutes on Friday morning and was about the 40th person in line to vote. She saw where voters in Atlanta had waited 8 hours to cast early ballots and was concerned the lines would be even longer on election day. I wanted to make sure I get in and get counted, Watson said. It looks a little bit like Disney. I'm willing to wait in line at Disney, so I should be willing to wait in line to vote. Lafayette Parish doubled its participation for the first 2 days of early voting from 5,771 in 2016 to 11,918. Voters at City Hall and the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans waited up to 45 minutes Monday to cast their early ballots. I've been waiting for years to vote against Trump, said Corey Craig as he emerged from the Smoothie King Center. It's his race baiting, his general hatred, and his bullying. The wait on Monday was longer at the Registrar of Voters' office in Marrero in Jefferson Parish. I'm a Republican and like his ideas, Mignon Lentz said after voting for Trump. He's working for the American people, and he's not pocketing all the money. Orleans Parish increased by 53%. Its 2-day total from 15,390 in 2016 to 23,552 in 2020. In Jefferson Parish, totals were up 69% from 9,991 to 16,880 for the first 2 days. We've cracked 250,000 statewide for the first days of early voting, which is a record, said John Gouvion of Baton Rouge-based JMC Analytics, who has studied voter turnout for years. The fact that we have much more Black and Democratic voters in the first 2 days speaks volumes to me, Gouvion said. Statewide in 2016, 71% of the turnout in the first 2 days were white voters, predominantly Republicans. This time around, the percentage of Black voters has increased 8 percentage points, while white voter turnout dropped to 62% during the first 2 days. When all is said and counted after November 3rd, the early voting increase of Black voters and Democratic Voters probably won't upset heavy favorites, Republicans, President Donald Trump, and U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy said, but it will cut into their margins deeply. Rather, the increased vote will have a greater impact on local races, such as the mayor-president's race in East Baton Rouge Parish, which he predicted will require a runoff on December 5th. If the Democratic vote approaches 55%, then the Democratic candidate, whether incumbent Mayor Sharon Weston Broome or State Representative C. Denise Marcel, will likely win easily. Gouvion predicted that the early voting totals will account for about 35% of the ballots cast in his election. That'd be up from 26% in 2016. Kalinda Lloyd, who was heading a statewide get out the vote effort for Together Louisiana, said what she's seen is more people of color from lower income precincts showing up in greater numbers at the polls. Together Louisiana has organized group precinct captains who are charged with contacting voters in their neighborhoods and urging them to vote. The biggest excuse the precinct captains are hearing is that working voters have jobs and won't allow them to stand in line for 4 hours. Or hearing they will still vote by November 3rd, Lloyd said, adding to the groups will hold Go Vote events on Saturday. Early voting ends October 27th. Polling station closes at 7 p.m. during early voting. Anyone in line by then will be allowed to vote, even if it's 2 or 3 hours later, said Tyler Bray, a spokesperson by Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin. Louisiana voters are deciding who will be president, U.S. Senator, all 6 members of the U.S. House of Representatives, 2 members of the Public Service Commission, 2 justices on the Louisiana Supreme Court, a number of state appellate court judges, all prosecutors and state district court judges, several local seats, 7 state constitutional amendments, and a local option on whether to allow sports betting in the parish. Louisiana ranks 6th in childhood obesity. Experts worry coronavirus could make things worse, by Jacqueline de Robtis, staff writer. Louisiana has one of the highest rates of childhood obesity in the country, and some health experts fear the coronavirus, which has kept kids sitting at home even more than usual, could only make things worse. The state ranks 6th in the nation for its rate of childhood obesity, according to newly released data for the 2018-2019 census. Louisiana's rate is 20.1% for children between the ages of 10 to 17, well above the national average of 15.5%. Obesity is a well-known risk factor for severe coronavirus symptoms, but there is limited information on how the coronavirus affects obese children because relatively few children overall have fallen seriously ill from the virus. Still, experts say the repercussions of the pandemic on a healthy lifestyle, like lockdowns keeping students at home and parents losing jobs, are what place children at risk. We know that obesity puts kids at greater risk for potentially lifelong health issues like type 2 diabetes, asthma, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, said Jamie Bussell, Senior Program Officer with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. In many ways, it is quite possible that these 2 crises are actually making each other worse. Before the pandemic, children were already made sedentary than they should be, spending too much time on iPads and video games, said Dr. Amy Calliot, a pediatric gastroenterologist with Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center. Then when the virus hit, the students found themselves confined to their homes and relegated to Zoom classes to finish their spring semester. Now experts say deviating from the structured existence school provides could further impact child health in a number of ways. School is a regimenting factor in children's, and Dr. Steve Hemsfield of Pennington Biomedical Research Center. They go to school, they get lunches that are reasonably healthy for the most part, they come home and have homework, all that. There's a tendency for weights in children to be lower during the school year and higher during the summer months. Hemsfield co-authored a recent study that looked at the sleep, activity, and early behaviors in Italian children before and during lockdown. They found that children ate more red meat and overall unhealthy foods, consumed fewer vegetables, and slept longer during lockdown compared to before when they were confined. COVID-19 is having an adverse effect on obesity in general and nutrition in general on kids, Hensville said. The childhood obesity epidemic, particularly in Louisiana, foretells a serious chronic disease epidemic in the next 10 and 20 years. Although eating more healthy foods and exercising frequently could stave off weight gain and the accompanying chronic health problems, also noted that the problem is more complicated than eating some vegetables and going for a jog. While, of course, it matters the extent to which you have access to healthy foods or opportunities for safe physical activity, obesity is completely influenced by community conditions, just the way we're seeing with the COVID pandemic, she said. Most school-age children have been exposed to some form of social isolation during the pandemic, but not all children have the same access to healthy food and safe places to exercise. Those hit hardest by COVID-19, such as majority Black communities and low-income families, also must contend with high rates of childhood obesity. Unemployment and hunger are linked, and what affects adults will inevitably affect their children, the expert said. I think it's absolutely critical that they get both food and financial support to survive this, Hemsville said. It's a very serious problem. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, in its breakdown of child obesity data, offered policy recommendations to address those food problems facing America's youth. House Democrats want to end special legislative session. Letter says little has been accomplished among stated goals by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor. House Democrats officially asked Monday that Louisiana legislative Republican leaders end the special session, arguing that little has been accomplished among the stated goals of the shoring up the trust fund that pay unemployment benefits and helping people in South Louisiana recover from storm damage. Instead, the GOP majority in the legislature has focused on trimming Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards' abilities to lead Louisiana through a pandemic of the highly contagious and often deadly COVID-19. The session is costing taxpayers more than $40,000 per day and will cost almost $2 million if we stay here until October 27th. Meanwhile, the legislative process has produced no major solutions to the problems brought to Louisiana by COVID-19. Hurricanes Laura and Delta. House Democratic Caucus leader Sam Jenkins of Shreveport wrote to House Speaker Clay Schnecksider, Republican from Gonzales, and Senate, and Senate President Page Cortez. There appears to be no new dollars this weekend appropriate to help struggling workers and small businesses. All indications are that no new federal stimulus is coming until after the election of November 3rd, Jenkins continued. Republican members called the legislature into a second special session on September 28th and must end by 6 p.m. October 27th. Jenkins delivered the letter in person around lunchtime Monday, while the Democratic representatives and senators alone didn't have the numbers to close down the special session. They can stop or at least pretend stumbling blocks for the legislation the Republicans want. Last week, Democratic House members said they could get behind legislation forwarded by Cortez, Republican from Lafayette, that would set up a commission to review a governor's actions, such as calling for phases that allow more people to gather together at the same time after 30 days. Senate Bill 29 has passed both chambers and have been in negotiations for more than a week on provisions added on by House Republicans. A faction of House Republican membership has advanced about 8 bills that, using different tactics, would most harshly clip gubernatorial powers during a health crisis. Baton Rouge casinos post revenue increase by Timothy Boone, staff writer. Baton Rouge 3 riverboat casinos collectively posted a 4.6% increase in winnings in September when compared to the year before, the best performance of any of the state's gambling markets during a month that was heavily impacted by hurricanes. The state's 14 riverboat casinos, Harrah's land-based casino and the 4 casinos, brought in just over $126 million during September, according to figures released Monday by the Louisiana Gaming Control Board. That's down 31.3% by the $183.4 million that 15 riverboats, Harrows, and the 4 racinos generated in September of 2019. Part of the reason for the big year-to-year drop was the damage done by Hurricane Laura to the lucrative Lake Charles market. Revenue on Lake Charles was off by 64.9% by nearly $62.2 million to $28.8 million. The Golden Nugget in Labarge, Lake Charles, reopened on September 11th after being damaged by the powerful late August storm. The slot machines at Delta Downs reopened on September 16th. The Isle of Capri, which had its gambling barge break loose and its land-based casino under construction, got damaged in the storm, was closed for the entire month, and it isn't expected to host gamblers until the beginning of 2021. Video poker revenue was up 13.4% in September to nearly $54.5 million from $48 million. The increase happened even though video poker revenue from bars was down by nearly 52%. Bars have been shut down for several months in an effort to control the spread of the coronavirus. But Governor John Bell Edwards allowed bars to begin reopening in September as long as they are located in parishes that have a low percentage of people testing positive for the virus. The 3 riverboat casinos in Baton Rouge brought in nearly $18.8 million in September compared to $70.9 million in winnings during September 2019. Hollywood Casino, which recently announced plans to build a gambling barge on land that will open in February 2022, brought in nearly $4.6 million during that month. That was a 19.1 increase over the $3.8 million it brought in during September of 2019. In other markets, Shreveport Bossier City posted $46 million in revenue, a 3.6 drop from $47.8 million, despite having one less casino due to the closure of the Diamond Jacks. Acadiana, represented by the slots at Evangeline Downs, was down 12.3% from $6.5 million to $5.7 million. No bid submitted for state building. The state's attempt, this is briefs from staff from Wire reports. The state's attempt to sell the former Champion Insurance Complex on Government Street in Baton Rouge didn't happen Monday because no one submitted bids on the property. There have been some speculation the sale would fail to drop bids even though the complex sits on an 8-acre tract along Government Street. For one, the minimum asking price was $4.255 million. Any potential bidder had only a month to put together a package, and the coronavirus pandemic has caused uncertainty in the local real estate market. Shock Berry, Policy and Communications Director for the Division of Administration, which maintains and operates state buildings, said there are a couple of options for the property. It could be relisted for sale, or another appraisal could be done that would result in a lower value than its original $4.255 million. We'll wait and see, Berry said. The complex at 4615 Government Street consists of 2 buildings facing the street with 8 acres behind them. One building is 40,272 square feet. The other is 17,881 square feet. There are 242 parking spaces on the property. Champion was once the state's 3rd largest auto insurance company until it collapsed in 1989. The state bought the property in 1990 for $372,687. It has been occupied by Capital Area Human Services, which moved to new offices and left the building vacant. Green healing, native trees like oaks and yagpawns are good for our environment and our health by Colette Dean, contributing writer. If you're planning to add trees and shrubs to your yard, now is the time to do it. Planting in the fall gives them time to get established, and when spring arrives, they will flourish. This season, look beyond crepe myrtles and Bradford pear trees and pick native trees, shrubs, and plants. When you think native, think plants that occur naturally in the region, state, ecosystem, or habitat without direct or indirect human intervention. Native trees like magnolias, oaks, swamp trees, yapons, native fringe trees, Virginia willows, feta brushes, pond cypress, swamp tupelos, native persimmons, and pawpaws can make your yard look great and provide crucial resources for wildlife. Native trees have been a crucial part of the mission of the Baton Rouge Green Program. The 30-year-old organization's priority used to be planting trees for beautification of the city's landscape, said Christopher Cooper, a program specialist for Baton Rouge Green. We made a transition from city beautification to seeing trees as what they really are, green infrastructure and essential infrastructure, he said. Because of this, we've been planting as many native trees as we can. To help turn our planted landscapes into effective biological corridors, Cooper said we need to add native plants to our neighborhoods, corporate landscapes, and lands bordering infrastructure, even in dense cities. Trees benefit us by improving air quality, especially important for people with pulmonary issues. Several scholarly studies also suggest that enhanced vegetation alongside roadways correlates to lower stress and frustration in drivers and reduced crash rates, according to the BRG website. Add your own trees to the count with Baton Rouge Green's My Tree program, using a smartphone, tablet, or computer. You can identify, measure, and map trees in your yard and neighborhood. Participants are guided through the tree identification and are added to plot the location of the tree on an interactive map and instantly see the benefits each tree they map provides to the community. For more information, you can contact Louisiana Master Naturalists of Greater Baton Rouge to seek awareness, understanding, and stewardship of the natural environment. For information, visit lmngbr.org, and we have a Master Naturalist program here in Lafayette as well. It's now 9:56. Our audio is cut off at our TV stations, but I can still be heard, or the news can be heard on our streaming live radio station, which is Cypress Street Radio. Just go to your web browser on your computer or a laptop or phone. Go to Cypress Street Radio, go to the homepage there, push the play button, you'll hear the news. Or you can even go to our YouTube station, which is AOC Community Media, to hear the audio portion of the news this morning. LSU Ag Center Garden News, How to Handle Damaged Trees by Heather Kirk Ballard, contributor writer. So continuing with the tree stories. Trees are very important features of our landscape, providing shade in summer, allowing heat to radiate into the house in winter, adding aesthetic beauty, and actually improving the value of our homes. For those of us who really love trees, they are priceless. However, when a storm blows through, the damage they leave behind can be devastating to homeowners and commercial industries. If major limbs or the tree's central main branches damage or down, you've likely lost your tree. Such extensive damage makes it very difficult for the tree to recover. Large wounds will take a long time to heal. If the tree is valuable and not a major threat to surrounding structures, you may leave it alone and it could possibly live a few more years or even recover with lots of care. If you have a goner on your hands, it's best to remove the tree. If trees are uprooted or leaning, the chances of survival are best when 1/3 to 1/2 of the roots are still in the soil and the remaining exposed roots are relatively undisturbed. To reset them, move a little soil from beneath the exposed root mass and set roots so that it will be below the existing soil grade level. Okay, Cajuns heading into sports. Cajun focus prep for big challenge at UAB on Friday. Big Kevin Foote, sports and staff writer for the Advocate. If the first game week practice for Friday at 7 p.m. road showdown with the UAB Blazers is any indication, the UL Raging Cajuns are focused and ready to go. No, there hasn't been a bunch of finger pointing within the team since last Wednesday's 30-27 home loss to Coastal Carolina. Still, some are viewing that setback as a wake-up call. I think we all took it as a wake-up call. UL junior linebacker Jordan Quibido said you could tell today in practice that everybody's attitude changed, like some of the coaches said. I think later in the season it's going to turn out being a blessing for us. We handled it well and we're ready to move forward. Did the Cajuns overlook a 3-0 Chanticleers club? Quibido says absolutely not. With that said, that doesn't mean the Cajuns dotted every I and crossed every T either. Whenever you watch film, it's never going to be as good as you thought and never going to be as bad as you thought, he explained. I just think the loss isn't on any one person or position group. No one that I came across in this building, players, coach, or staff, took Coastal lightly or took the win streak lightly. That's the kind of program that's here, but at the same time, it's just human nature. It was apparent in Sunday's first practice of the game, especially today in practice. We just had a really good practice today, Quibido said. We feel that everybody knows that can't happen again. We're ready to get in our groove. On Sunday, we had a great practice, maybe one of the best of the season so far. Wednesday was a wake-up call for us, and I feel like we're ready to go now. The old coach, Billy Napier, didn't publicly put a finger on any perceived mental drop-off of area or concern in the team's preparation routine. He also didn't dismiss the notion that a potential wake-up call was necessary. I think it's important that we can't lose sight of our identity, Napier said. This is a hard-working, blue-collar, tough organization. We work hard during the week physically and mentally. We've got to prepare a certain way and have a certain expectation in the meetings and walkthroughs and practice. Not to say that we don't have been doing those things, but the level of execution on game day is, in my opinion, a reflection of how you practice. Napier certainly isn't passing any bucks. I think the next big thing for us is we've challenged and kind of redefined expectations. The intensity and urgency we have in the meetings and the walkthroughs, every practice rep, he said, this got to be a well-defined expectation. That's my job. Players will sometimes do what you allow them to do. As a staff, we've got to do a great job of creating that intensity and urgency and holding them accountable. LCA volleyball is still seeking an identity. State finalists last season hit hard by graduation, off to an 8-4 start by Mike Kopage, contributing writer. After losing 4 players to the college ranks, Lafayette Christian's Academy's volleyball team is searching for its identity. In 2019, the Knights began the season 27-0 and finished with a 34-5 record. As a number 1 seed in Division 4, LCA reached the final before failing to Pope John Paul II. All 4 of my seniors that graduated are playing college ball. LCA coach Brian Barrett said 2 of those players, Kiara Washington and Corey Calloway, were all Metro and All-State performers. Washington, Division 4 MVP, racked up 423 kills, while Calloway had 340. They were all-state pin hitters, Barrett said. That's hard to replace because they carry so much of the offensive load. We also lost our setter, Sam Gilmore, and our libero, Alexa Ardwin. That's like losing your best wide receivers and your quarterback. The Knights, who are now 8-4, did return 2 key players in an all-Metro selection, Jordan Laverne and Caitlin Washington. Both our middle blockers are back, Barrett and Laverne and Washington. They've been playing ball for a long time. I'll put them up against any middle tandem in the state. But we're getting better every day. You don't have to be good early, you have to be good late. I think it's been a little bit of a shock to people because they thought we'd just get right back into the groove from last year. But there's been so much adversity to the season before losing those seniors compounded with COVID-19. That about wraps it up for today's stories. We're already a few minutes past the hour of 10. We usually do go to 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, where a volunteer reader like myself reads the news supplied to us in collaboration with the Acadiana Advocate for our local news live. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. We do this free of service to our visually impaired audience and community, as well as those in our community who don't have access to the news cycle, either through the newspaper or through watching it on TV or whatever other source where they hopefully would get their news from. And that's why we provide this service. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer newspaper reader, we would love to have you as part of our family. All you have to do is go to our website, which is aocinc.org, pull down the volunteer page, look up newspaper reading volunteer, fill in all the information, and our wonderful Mandy will be in touch with you and get you all set up. We've all been doing it from our home studio since the pandemic hit Louisiana. This is where I'm reading the news from this morning. So as always, this is Bruce Cohen. Will always be Bruce Cohen. I appreciate, again, you listening. I want you to stay safe, healthy, and smart. Continue to be smart about this pandemic. Don't let your guard down. If you're in a group of people that you're not familiar with, wear your mask, but always wear your mask when you go out, when you're around a group of people other than your own family or friends who you've been quarantined with for 6, 7 months now. So just, do everything we know to do, wash your hands and all that good stuff to stop the spread. And as always, be kind to each other. Have a great day. See you on the flip-flop.